Hello, I am Tarık Toros. Welcome to What's Happening in Turkey. The price of legitimacy, what Erdogan paid Trump at the White House. This week, Turkey passed a turning point. On 25th of September, President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan finally got his long-coveted White House invitation. He was hosted by US President Donald Trump, but not without paying a steep price. The backdrop was Ankara's commitment to buy hundreds of Boeing aircraft, a deal worth tens of billions, exposed just days before by Turkey's own opposition. In this episode, we'll unpack what really happened, how scandals surrounding Turkey's government were quietly pushed aside, how Erdogan was publicly belittled in front of cameras, how Trump controlled the Oval Office as a media stage, why he nevertheless extended support, and what these arrangements mean for Turkey's economy and democracy. A quest for legitimacy. Erdogan is entering one of the most fragile phases of his political career. With Turkey isolated diplomatically, the economy crumbling, and his strongest domestic rival Ekrem İmamoğlu imprisoned, he desperately needs to project international recognition. One day before the summit, US Ambassador Tom Barak let the truth slip at the Concordia summit. Recalling a private exchange with Trump, he said, "It's not about S-400s or fighter jets. What Erdogan wants is legitimacy."
So what happens is our president says, you know what? I'm tired of all of this. Let's take a bold move and on a relationship-to-relationship base, give them what they need. So yes, Mr. President, what is that? He says legitimacy.
That one word, legitimacy, reveals everything. For Erdogan, a handshake in the Oval Office is less about policy substance than survival. Proof to his base at home that he still counts on the world stage. Erdogan angers Trump. But even as he sought that lifeline, Erdogan undermined himself. 3 days earlier, live on Fox News, he claimed Trump had failed to end the wars in Ukraine and Gaza. He said he would end them. Has he? No. The statement enraged Trump, who prides himself on being a deal maker who ends wars. Even boasting he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize, Erdogan's staff quickly scrambled, insisting the comments were mistranslated. Fox replayed the clip and confirmed the translation was accurate. The real problem, Erdogan speaking without notes, slipped into criticizing his host. Secretary of State Marco Rubio seized the moment. On Fox, he mocked foreign leaders like Erdogan begging for an audience with Trump. Meeting day, 25th of September. Erdogan arrived at the White House already on the defensive. Initially, the meeting was declared closed to press, but Trump reversed that decision at the last minute, inviting cameras against Ankara's wishes. The optics mattered. Trump wanted the world to see Erdogan sitting across from him, visibly dependent. In the 22 minutes of open coverage, Trump controlled the stage completely. Erdogan, visibly tense, spoke only a handful of sentences. He awkwardly raised topics Trump had not touched: the Greek Orthodox Halki Seminary and the Halkbank sanctions case. His disjointed remarks fed the impression of a leader cornered, struggling to hold his narrative. The Halkbank nightmare. For Erdogan, Halkbank is not just another corruption case. It is the sword hanging over his head in Washington. The case dates back to 2016, when businessman Reza Zarrab was arrested in Miami. He later turned state witness, revealing how billions from Iran's oil trade were laundered through Turkish banks using gold and cash. His testimony implicated senior Turkish ministers and even Erdogan's son-in-law, Berat Albayrak. At Manhattan Federal Court, Halkbank faced crushing penalties. Documents and testimonies pointed directly to Erdogan's inner circle. For a decade, the case has been Erdogan's number one fear in US politics because it blends geopolitics with personal vulnerability. According to insiders, the Trump deal was this. Turkey would pay about $100 million in fines, but without admitting guilt. For Erdoğan, it was a temporary escape from a case that could one day resurface. Trump's barbed remark. Then came the sting. At one point, Trump pointed at Erdoğan and quipped,
Even for 4 years, when I was in exile, unfairly, as it turns out, rigged election, he knows about rigged elections better than anybody.
Trump meant it as a jab linked to his own contested 22 defeat, which he calls stolen. But to international audiences, it sounded like an acknowledgement that Erdoğan manipulates elections in Turkey. A brutal humiliation, delivered before cameras, in the very setting Erdoğan had sought for validation. Trump also pressed Ankara on energy politics, demanding Turkey reduce its reliance on Russian oil.
Did Erdoğan agree to stop buying Russian oil?
I don't want to say that, but if I want him to, he will. Yeah.
Meanwhile, new deals were signed. A civil nuclear cooperation agreement, a 20-year, $43 billion LNG import contract. And, one day later, Turkish Airlines' purchase of 225 Boeing planes. The price of legitimacy. In the end, Erdoğan got his photo opportunity, but it came with unprecedented costs. Trump's support was transactional and conditional, captured in one line.
Did you make a deal on F-35s, Mr. President?
I will be able to easily if I want. So we may do that, yeah.
But not yet.
Well, it depends. He's going to do something for us, yeah. Please.
The reality is harsh. Turkey remains shut out of the F-35 program because of its purchase of Russian S-400 missiles. US sanctions under CAATSA remain in force. Congress, not Trump, controls the path forward. For Ankara, the dream of restoring strategic cooperation is still out of reach. What Erdoğan did secure were trade deals, massively expensive commitments that strain Turkey's already depleted treasury. For Trump, the takeaway is simple. Erdoğan is a leader who will pay to stay in the game. Conclusion, a costly photo op. The White House visit will be remembered less as a diplomatic breakthrough than as a costly theater performance. Erdoğan left Washington with a handshake and some flattering headlines at home. But behind that image lies humiliation, transactional politics, and billions in commitments that Turkey can ill afford. For legitimacy abroad, Erdoğan mortgaged his country's future. I am Tarık Toros. This was What's Happening in Turkey. See you next week.